Welcome to our inaugural episode of Spry Speaks podcast, a small business forum to discuss government contracting and my favorite technology and its impacts on our industry. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest, Mr. Josh Skule, CEO, President at Bowwave LLC. Welcome in, Josh.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
This is our inaugural podcast, and so help me out as I go through this, but really appreciate you being here. Josh, if you could give us a quick intro on you and who you are, where you're from, what you've done.
Yeah, it'll be very quick, Jason. So I after college, I spent 6 years in the Marine Corps. Left the Marine Corps, was lucky enough to get in the FBI. Spent my first half of my career really in Chicago, working violent crime, public corruption, drugs, a lot of fun. Then came to DC, went into national security, counterterrorism division. I did several stints there at headquarters and 2 at the Washington field offices. Then culminated my career as the chief of intelligence for the FBI.
Rock on.
And then retired in 2019, and then about 3 years ago formed Bowwave LLC with my longtime friend, classmate, Dan Zanitas.
And when did y'all do that? What year?
That would have been 21.
Wow.
And so we're an SCBO.
Semi-pandemic?
Yeah, right after, really.
Yeah.
And so we've been talking about it for years. Dan is a really smart guy and super talented, and so it's and we've kept in touch over the 30 plus years that we've known each other.
Sure.
And I've known him since July 2nd, 1987. So
wow.
Yeah.
Dang. So I think for today's kind of topic and discussion, what I wanted to kind of get into, and I think what we want to do on these podcasts is kind of, I want to make it industry specific, especially in the GovCon sector. I'm a technologist by trade personally, and but what I wanted to do is kind of focus on what I think is important to our community. And one of the topics we came up with was, there's a lot of people that want to learn how to transition from, especially at some point in time in their careers, go into primary career as a kind of a person in the government, and then eventually transitioning into GovCon. And not everybody understands how to do that, or the complexities or nuances involved, and not everybody's successful at it either. So I think what I'm hoping to do today is kind of, glean from you what you've learned in that transition, and maybe leave some nuggets of wisdom for the next group of people who are looking to do the same, right? So that's kind of the intent of what we were looking to do today. So I guess from my perspective, I've always been on the GovCon side, right? I've never spent a day on the other side, so I've kind of seen it and grown it. I've been doing it for 20 some odd years myself. And I've always seen government people, and I've always seen them transition in and over. And I always thought it was very special seeing folks come over to our side. I guess from your perspective, when you made that transition, how was it? Was it nerve-wracking? Was it?
Sure, of course. Running your own business is very nerve-wracking. Yeah. And refreshing. I mean, you're responsible for everything.
Yeah.
So win, lose, it's on you.
Yep.
Especially as you're getting going, and then you have codependencies, and you learn along the way. What I've found most refreshing is the ability. Is just a constant learning environment, and so there are pluses and minuses, and I'll speak to what I know, because I mean the government is ginormous, so the transition for others could be different than my experience.
Sure.
So but in this area, in the DMV, primarily the industry is government contracting. In other industries, you go up to New York, or there's financial industries, and I have several friends that have successfully transitioned in there as well, and so. It's really finding, what is your skill sets that would match up with the jobs in government contracting, and so just having relationships is helpful with both folks in industry and in the government, and your knowledge is helpful, but translating that into what could be, real revenue,
right?
While also being effective for the mission, are things that folks transitioning have to get their head around. It's not just about the mission, and so what you see is a lot of folks that transition go into the security roles, very,
Right.
very important, but also very, very familiar for what they were doing before, especially coming out of the FBI. Very
Right.
familiar. Difference is resources on the security side in a company are going to be more limited because it's overhead, and you have to, and so a budget and a P&L are very, very different. Very, very different.
Yep.
So those types of things, but also, what I've seen, I think there's business development has a negative connotation for those inside the government, generally speaking.
Sure.
However, it really is about developing relationships, and so and having those relationships to go and figure out how to accomplish the mission, winning business and affecting the mission. So if you were to break it down, it is not as defined as folks think in the government.
Okay.
So that, and then in the government contracting world, almost every RFP that business goes after is about teammates too.
Yeah. Very much so.
And so even if you're large, if you're a large SI and you're going after a huge project, you're more than likely going to have a small business plan as a part of that bid.
100%. That's where we come in, right?
Yeah, that's where we come in. And if you're a small going after a large project, you're going to have a big that's willing to come in and support you, more than likely to support you. That's just how the world works. And so having those relationships across government contracting is important.
Right. So did anything when you were in the government side, was your perception of the contracting different than it is today? Did you learn something through the process of being on this side of the house that you're like, wow, I didn't realize that about the government contracting side of the house when you were in the government side?
Well, there's a lot you learn, and there's different perspectives on both sides. When you're in the government, you think contractors are always trying to sell you something.
Right.
Sometimes that's true, sometimes that's not.
Right.
But that's the guard that you have up, is what am I getting sold today?
Right. What are these guys bringing? Why are they in my office today?
That's right. And how is that going to, what can I do and what can't I do?
Right.
That's always in the regard. In reality, and depending on who you're dealing with, that could be true.
Sure.
And so then you're, on the technical side, folks will come in and talk about innovation and tech advancement and those things. And what I used to think was like, okay, that costs money.
Okay.
Right? That's money. And where I think the contracting community needs to grow is that maybe that's not. Maybe that's just efficiencies. And certainly if I'm already on contract doing technical work for you, what I would do differently is like, hey, where else are you seeing similar problems in your portfolio, and how are you solving those?
Right.
And so, and does that then fit into the scope of our contract?
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know that from where I came from, they in all aspects of justice do they ask those types of questions. Consequently, the vendors don't do that either.
Right.
And so they don't come in and just kind of lay out solutions that could fit into the scope of the contract. So that's how those have been some big changes. And then kind of what matters to the government and matters to the contracting community sometimes
different.
Very, very different.
Yeah, you get a broader perspective, I think, on the industry side. You're not as central. That particular mission, it is important, but you see other missions that are important too, and you're like, how do I help facilitate and solve problems across either within an agency or even broader at a broader agency level?
Sure.
And you're looking at these different missions. How do I apply my skill sets and my talent pool to all these different spaces? But meeting your particular mission as you need it, because when you're in the government, that's your mission right there.
That is your mission, and as vendors, we have to be very, very tuned to that. And I think often you can open up the lines of communication just a little bit more without having to quote unquote sell or mod or do anything like that. But at least understanding what is affecting the government in a better sense from the contracts you're already on.
So you start your bow wave, 2021. How long did it take you before you got your first revenue generating event?
Well, that's a difficult question to answer. Is because first government contract or first revenue generating event?
Let's go with contracting. So
Contracting would have been in 22.
okay.
First revenue generating would have been in about 3 months into 21.
Okay. So you come out, you hang that shingle.
Well, yeah, but I didn't do that right away.
Okay.
And so, so I went to work for the world's largest security provider, and so I got a real feel for what what a P&L was like,
Right.
how that was, and so that experience. And so when I departed there, at least I had a baseline for what that looked like. I'm by no means an expert in
Sure.
that regard, but it is very different. It would have been harder to do this, in my opinion,
Straight out.
And for me,
Sure.
right.
I mean, it could be for anybody, though. I mean, if you're on the government side, how many times do you really get to see what a P&L looks like?
You don't even know.
Right.
Nor do you generally care.
Fair enough, right? But when you're on this side of the house, it's all of a sudden,
Yeah.
you got to feed,
Well, that's it. I mean, if the government or if the companies aren't successful or aren't generating profitability, they generally cease to be companies.
That's right.
Yeah,
right. You're going somewhere else.
Yeah. And so there goes those services and capabilities. And so, yeah.
So you set up BowWave, and you did it as a hub zone. So for those who are listening in, there's in the government contracting world, there's various different types of businesses, right? You got large businesses, small businesses. In the small business arena, there's different categories of small businesses. We have service disabled businesses. We have minority owned businesses called 8As. We have Alaska Native businesses. We have hub zone businesses, which are really servicing kind of a community that's, I guess, underprivileged.
Underutilized business. Underutilized business. Now, to be clear, we're service disabled and a hub zone.
Excellent. So how did you choose, or how did you learn about that hub zone component?
So, I mean, as we were establishing BowWave, we started to ping our network and get feedback from folks. And there's one of our classmates from the Naval Academy, very successful in the government contracting world, and helped us to establish what we should be as a business coming out.
Okay.
And so that's how we really started to research it and become a hub zone. And what we've seen it is an opportunity to go after other business that in a much more reduced competitive environment.
Right. And you're also helping a community that's, like you
Well,
said, underserved,
that's
right?
absolutely true. And so the 20 or so folks that we have as hub zone are providing service to us and being able to in some cases develop additional skill sets in order to do that.
Gotcha. You've got contracts now,
We do.
right? And I'm sure those are fun. That's
Of
a
course,
whole nother set of learning, right?
But that is why you got in the business. If you're
True.
right, if
You're succeeding there.
right, if you didn't want the contract, so I don't know why you're in the business.
That's fair. But that also adds its next level of challenges,
Okay.
right? So now you're executing
Sure.
out the world. So what, any advice, recommendations about transitioning into that first contract after you're coming into?
Well, again, it depends on how large, scalability is always going to be a challenge for any
Sure.
business. And so we grew quite rapidly in 24. So having the infrastructure in place before you start to grow is important.
And what are we talking about infrastructure?
You want to have your accounting, your HR, your employee handbook, your benefits, all of those. Now, unfortunately, there's no way to set that up at the time of award.
Right.
So now you are setting those things up in advance of an award and paying for services.
Right.
Frankly, you don't really need.
Yeah, you're getting it ahead of time.
You are, but you're also that's
Cost.
Yeah. But the chicken and egg is you can't all of a sudden set it up as quickly.
Right.
Once you start hiring employees, it's not possible.
Right. It's too late.
So
at
what's
that point in time.
what's the balance of turning that on? And then of course, as you win some and you lose some. So if
Sure.
you're counting on a win and you lined up all these services, you can't just shut them off after that.
That's right.
Yeah, and if you didn't win the contract,
That's right.
there's the next contract, and
Yep.
and so I would say that was probably what the biggest not challenge, but looking back, I was happy that we had that infrastructure at least in place.
Sure. Ready to go.
Ready to go, and we had some employees. But when we really started to grow, it was critical that was there.
Who when you transition, you helping out the mentors, the angels, if you will. How did that impact your when you're starting it up? The advice, like helping you, say, hey, kick this off now. Did you have a group of people helping you through that to kind of give you that?
Oh, I had a ton of mentors. We had signed up, as I mentioned. There was a classmate of ours who had done a small business cohort for folks that were looking to start businesses.
Right.
That was very helpful. He has been successful, and then I had a host of other folks that were providing insight and opinion and advice as well. And I would take all of that, and then I would, Dan Zanitz and I we would decide whether or not that line was what we were going to do, or that advice was. And some of it was stuff we should have done that we didn't.
Right.
There was stuff that we did do that has yielded us greatly, and then there was advice that we didn't take that we didn't. That was somebody. It was somebody else's opinion. Probably. But honestly, one of my closest consigliaries and somebody I trusted in a lot, who really helped us get off the ground, is no longer with us.
Yeah, I think you're talking Jack.
Yep, and so he, without a doubt, was my most personal and he's a friend of mine, but on the business side was a great advocate and mentor, and really provided.
It's where you and I got to know each other.
That's right.
Jack too. So.
Yeah. And so.
Yeah, he was my boss over at It goes all the way back to the Analysis Corporation. Well, he wasn't my boss back then. I'm not going to give him that, but I will give him at some point in time. He became my boss. He's a good dude.
Yeah.
It's a hard loss, but
so he
left a lot for all of us here.
He did, and so he really helped, not only as an advocate but as a mentor.
Great stuff. If you had to pick coming out of the government, doing it the way that you did, so you had a transition period between government and starting your own gig where you learned the industry.
Yep.
Was that the right, is that a good move for somebody coming to, who may have the entrepreneurial spirit and wants to start their own thing, to just kind of get an understanding of this side of the house?
Entrepreneurial spirit. People have asked me that before. I never considered myself an entrepreneur, but I guess
you're here.
I guess so.
You got to grow into it now, man.
I do. Many will start their own business as a one man, one woman show. I knew that I did not have the complete picture of being able to do that, and so having a partner for me was critical.
Right.
Different experiences, we're different people, we're different. We approach things very differently.
You can bounce ideas off somebody.
We can. We also get in great arguments over philosophical differences on how to go forward. But that's
who wins.
It's a toss-up. It's a toss-up. We're partners, right? So fair. He provides great insight and has a different perspective on things than I do, and that in my opinion is very, very healthy. If you all thought the same way, that you're probably gonna drive the train into a ditch at some point.
Right.
And then we brought on another partner, Dan Smith, who also has a different network, a different philosophy, different experiences than what Dan Zanitz and I have, and that's been critical to success. So coming out, you have to understand what you want to be and what you want to do. I have friends that have been very, very successful at being, professional one-person consultants,
right.
And that's a good life for them, and that allows them to rely on their 20 or 30 years of experience and help others grow. That's great. For those that are looking to start a business, you have to take stock and what and how you're going to go forward, and how much risk you're willing to take, and
believing in yourself too, right?
Yeah, sure. You only have to look in the mirror if it's not successful.
Right.
But those are, what I've seen is two different tracks. It's just generalizing. There's those folks that are going to start their own company and they're going to be billable, so they'll be the PM.
Yep.
So go to work for Spry. I'll be the PM, and then I'll build my business, as I do that. And I have another friend of mine,
Just dual hatting it, burning both ends of that.
which he
wick.
did and that's what ends up happening, right?
Right.
So you're not doing a podcast at 9
No,
o'clock in the
no,
morning.
you're not.
You're not, and so you're doing all of that at 7, 8 o'clock at night, and then getting up and working. And so that's a challenge. That's a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Consequently, you focus on the business, and you're not billable on site all the time.
Right.
Well,
Eating.
that's a challenge too, because there's no immediate paycheck coming in.
Right. There's no revenue generation.
Until you start winning business. And so I think both have its pluses and minuses.
Sure.
And how much runway and what your plan is and all of that.
So skill sets wise, coming out of the government, you were in leadership. You had a lot of leadership training. How much does that translate into running the business and being on this side of the house?
I would say I had a lot of leadership experiences.
Okay.
Depending on where you are in the government, there's some training, but not a lot. Military spends a lot of time on formal leadership training. I think leadership experience, leadership training, equates to no matter what industry you're in.
Sure.
How do you treat people? Setting
Hard
expectations,
problems.
hard problems, decisions. Relying on others, building a team. Building a team is probably the most critical skill sets. Right. Having the right people around you, right people providing you feedback, the right, that's essential to any organization. Transcends industry. My favorite pastimes is football.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a great head coach and you have crummy staff, chances of you being successful are not high.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth to that.
Right, and so it's the same in business or in government or whatever is. And so, understanding how to build a team, understanding where you taking stock on what you know and what you don't know, adding value where you can add value. So I think it is directly translatable. You just have to change the line of thinking. Instead of working on a joint task force, you may be teaming with another company, and how does
solve that problem?
Right.
Yeah, it's just as hard problems, I think. You're also thinking about lots of different things at different times, and you also are dealing with, the government's got their own agenda and their own schedule, and you're kind of beholden to it in our industry. So slippages in contracts, RFQs coming out, like all that's new noise on this side of the house that you got to deal with.
And it's just, as my physics professor used to say, it's all the same, just different.
Okay.
Which was never helpful. But now that I'm older, I'm like, oh yeah, that's true. Right.
Yeah.
It wasn't helpful when I was trying to pass the class, but it is helpful now. So now it's just like, okay, what are those things that are going to affect your business, your mission, in order to continue to generate revenue for your company and relate to the client, most importantly, and be able to positively affect the mission, which is why you're in this, right? So it's a dual hat. You have to make money as a company because otherwise you cease to exist.
Right.
But you also can't lose sight of the mission and being able to ensure you're having a positive outcome and attending to those folks to make sure that they understand why your people are there to affect the mission. And sometimes you have to step back and explain to them the import of what they are doing.
Right.
Because your folks that are in the trenches, they don't always understand what the significance of what they're doing really is. And thus far, we've been lucky to be on contracts that it is easily articulable as to why that mission is essential.
Right. Yeah, you do have, especially in where we're working in our industry, right? So within the government sector, in the specific kind of subsector, it's easy to articulate and get people jazzed about what we do. Right?
Sure.
So that does help. My personal experience, that's why I'm here, right? I could have done many things many different ways. Most of us can, but there's a lot of, it just draws you back in. It's kind of I relate it to people. It's kind of it's my drug and what I get addicted to.
Sure.
So really enjoy that. So
going back though to mentors and partnerships and the likes. I don't. Well, we had some formal folks in helping us. There's also an incredible network of relationships that I'm fortunate enough to have, friends and others that I've spent a lot of years with that are now in industry where you can have very safe conversations with
Yeah.
them about how companies are thinking. What are we doing? How is there a role for bow wave in there? And what is nice about that is they're going to be super candid with you.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's yes, sometimes it's no, sometimes it's maybe.
Yeah.
And so, okay, how do we affect that? And is there somebody that I should be introduced to? Is there some way? Do you have a requirement for this? And especially as and we're still in the growing phase, obviously. But when you're getting going, it can be challenging.
Yeah. There's a lot of different touch points too. Everybody, where are you going to find the fruits of your labor, where you invest? Where are those going to materialize into something that pays off in the end, right? And there's a lot of that.
There's a lot of I'm very busy. Is it good busy or bad busy?
That's right.
Right. You don't, and you won't know.
Yeah. Why am I busy right now?
You won't. Sometimes you won't know for a year.
Yep.
Maybe longer. And does the efforts that you're putting forward, are they going to yield results?
Right.
And so, we want to work with people that want to work with us and that want to be,
Yeah.
for the same, candor, truthful, say what you're going to, tell me what you're going to do and then do it. That's how we want to, and we pride ourselves on that as well. And we want to be upfront and honest and transparent. And I think that is the best way to go forward. Sometimes it hurts, but we have friends of ours that are in positions with large SIs and called me and said, we're not getting invited to the dance. And consequently, I've had others that have said, "Hey, we want to bring you onto our team. How do we do that?" I'm like, "You just did it."
Yeah.
That's how it works for me, right? I can commit us, So and it's just navigating that, and so
yeah. Quickly too. I mean, there's you go through so much. That's my experience as well. It's kind of like there's conversations you have that are fruitful, and you can kind of tell right away, and there's others that they're meaningful. They might be long-term investments, but it's really trying to figure it out. And to your point, it's like the quicker you can kind of get to the point, I think the better it is for everybody. So,
but understand, like those folks that you're dealing with in other companies, their job is to make money for their company.
100%,
right?
100%,
and not make money for me.
Well, unless there's a synergy there.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Unless how do I fit into that
right
puzzle, or how do they fit into my puzzle, and how is this and as and does this give us a better chance to win or not? And so and that is going back to the skill sets question, is leveraging your relationships to have conversations that can in industry that allow for those partnerships and capabilities to come together to affect mission outcomes. And how do you articulate that and come together?
Good stuff. All right, so I'm going to pivot on you. I guess what I want to do is, as we kind of wrap up our podcast segment here, I want to get to know you a little bit, have people get to know you a little bit better. I'm a big work hard, play hard guy, right? So I put a lot of passion into this industry, but I also do some stuff outside of work. For you, how do you unwind from working on so many hours, investing into the company? How do you balance that in your life?
Yeah, I don't.
All right, fair enough.
I really don't. It's
so you're always
thankfully, I outkicked my coverage.
Okay.
When I married my wife.
Okay.
And so we married over 30 years, and so she's
good stuff.
Extremely patient on numerous fronts.
Okay.
We have 4 kids, and so going to visit them. 2 of them are athletes. My daughter's down south. My son's in the area, and so seeing them and spreading our time there is challenging. Not challenging good, but we're figuring out how to
do that.
How to go visit all of them all the time.
You got any grandbabies yet?
No grandbabies.
Oh.
So and then I have my daughter-in-law is our chief of social media, PR, chief of staff, and so she's
cool.
So I see her a lot, and so unwinding, I'm lucky to have a network of friends that are very supportive.
Yeah.
And then my own personal stuff, right? And so
sure.
Yeah. But
I kind of in the same boat. We've got 4 kids. The wife's the one that pulls me back, grounds me a little bit, brings me back, or else I'd be working too much. So.
Yeah, she's good with me working too much. We're at a different stage in our life.
Sure.
And so it's in some regards she works too, and so when we're going on a vacation or a long weekend. I mean, there may be times where I'm not as present, just because that's how the industry goes, and that's good and bad. I mean, everybody thinks remote work is going to be awesome.
Until you do it all the time.
Till you do it all the time.
You're always connected. You can't get away from it.
That's right. And so and there's no reason. And so it can become not the greatest, because there is no. It's really hard to draw a line. Some people do it phenomenally well.
Sure.
But then on the flip side of it, when you're trying to get a hold of somebody that's trying to draw a line, it's very frustrating because you have answers and stuff you want to do, and then consequently that's the expectation when you're not there. And so, but that's just the way. I mean, that's the way it is. And so, remote work is only good when you want it to be good.
Yeah,
you avoid the commute, right?
You do that. I had a terrible one this morning getting here. So
mine was pretty easy. It was.
You don't live out in the middle of nowhere like I do.
But you're right. There's no division in that aspect. There's no hard break in your day when you're working remote. And so, positive and negative.
Yeah, no doubt. My wife was talking to me about she wants to schedule a beach week next year in September. And I tell her, every time you schedule something in September, understand that that's probably my busiest season of the year. That's when...
Push to October would be better.
Yeah, 100%, October, but then it gets colder, right? So she wants to do it in September. So I'm like, we can do it in September. I might not be fully available.
That's right.
It's just how it goes, right? So it's the nature of our industry, so...
Well, we were down in... we went on spring break with my daughter last week, who's in college, and we were in South Carolina, and my wife and daughter and my daughter's girlfriends, they were out all day.
Yeah.
And I was
all day
in a nice house that I paid for, that and then, but then you'd go out at night or whatever. Sure. Try and balance it. But it is, so there's positives and negatives, right? You're not stuck at home. You're able to at times take your work with you, so that's a positive. So you're at a nice place in South Carolina. Consequently, you're stuck in the nice place in South Carolina. So.
Would you say that you work harder now or when you were in the government? I know it's probably a different hard, and it's probably a different commitment.
I don't know that I could distinguish between one or the other. Obviously my work in the government was all on site, so you're working longer.
And you're mission guy.
Long days, and you're there, and you're driving home, and then consequently, I have long days. They're just different days. And so for us, I mean, we're a small business. So when we have opportunity or things are going on, I mean, I'm in front of the computer. And so that could be 6 o'clock in the morning or 9 o'clock at night. I could have had a break in my day in the middle of the day. And now I'm 9, 10, 11 at night, or 6, 7 in the morning. You're doing those things. And then it just, so I don't think it's, I mean, the folks I work with in the FBI were tremendously mission oriented, and they were very great patriots. So they were dedicated public servants, and that organization is made up of dedicated public servants. So when the mission had to be done, they were there also.
Right.
So I don't. It's just different.
Okay. Different type of hard.
Yeah, but it wasn't. But it wasn't like you say hard. Yeah, of course. But I mean, really, what you're asking, are your days longer in the government or longer in the industry, or was it harder or different? I mean, there's just challenges to both sides of that mission.
Fair. Okay. Well, Josh, I appreciate you coming in today, man. Parting last words. So, you got people listening to this. I've heard us banter on for a little while.
Well, you hope people are going to listen to it.
Maybe. It might be me and you, right? Let's assume that somebody's listening to this. Perhaps somebody that's looking to change out from, I'd say, public servant side of the house to government contracting or wherever it is. What's the single piece of advice that you'd like to leave them with?
Well, I'm not going to leave them with a single piece of advice.
Okay.
I'm going to leave them with kind of a roadmap. With a couple of things. One, do your research. Define what you want to do and what you don't want to do. And then what I mean by that is not by the job, but by the elements of those jobs. What made you happy, what didn't. Hit your network and ask them about, do some research. Ask them about their day, their company, they're, what they're seeing for compensation packages. How hard do you want to work or not work? Or, a lot of folks from where I came from really only knew about the large companies.
Yeah, that's all you really see sometimes.
That's all, and there's 55,000 government contractors, and so in our industry that's a lot, and there's pros and cons to working for the larges, and there's pros and cons working for the mid tier. So just when you're coming out, step back, assess your network, and then set up meetings. What I've found is formers and are, for the most part, they're excited to help and or talk, and so don't always just look. Most of us were looking, hey, is there a job? Well, of course that's the end game, but are there opportunities to understand what I may or may not be getting into, and that helps you understand the culture. It helps you understand, kind of what the comp package is going to be, the industry I want to be in, and those types of things. And so I think that, I'm fortunate enough. When you look across I have relationships that were a result of different jobs I had in the bureau. Obviously I had a tight bureau network, but then there's others that are came from other federal agencies that we also know that have also very helpful in understanding how they're thinking about things, how they transition to those types of aspects. So take the time to do that. Will probably yield you a better result than you would have thought by just going out to ask people if what they know of available jobs in this field or what you're looking for.
Right.
And so and help you peel the onion on what you want to do.
Right. Excellent. Appreciate your time, sir. Thank you for being here for our inaugural. We'll see how this one goes, and hopefully we get an opportunity to bring something new, something exciting to the industry every time we talk, and really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I hope from the feedback we get, you also get ideas for this, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's an inaugural, so for those folks that are listening, where would they want to hear folks in our industry talk about topics or types of speakers they would want to have come in?
100%.
Right?
I mean, that's the whole goal, right?
Yeah, like let's be impactful and thoughtful and get some thought leadership going in our industry to help others, whether the topic we had today, transitioning, or once they've transitioned, what that next hurdle looks like. That first year, that second year.
That's right.
There's a whole bunch of examples out there. How to think about technology, how to think about AI. All that is really, really, really impactful. So I wish you well in this. I hope I can come back.
Appreciate it. Absolutely. Have an open door for you, and let's see how the industry looks at this and gives us their feedback. And appreciate you and your time.
Yeah.
Thanks, sir. Thank you.